We're here. Hello, hello, afternoon. You guys are going to love it today. We've got Rob Rettmann, who's the Director of Education for CR Fitness, and that's Crunch Fitness. Rob, I'm going to pull you up with me. Let's see here. There we go. Awesome. And all right, so if you could give the viewers a little bit of your background, like, so what does that mean? You know, it's okay. I've heard of Crunch Fitness. It's an awesome gym. It's your big box gym. So you typically have, you know, a Anytime Fitness, Hot Works, CrossFit. That's what we would call a smaller box. And then on the big box side, you've got the Lifetime. You've got 24-hour fitness. You've got Esporta, Equinox, Crunch Fitness. So tell us a little bit about, you know, your role with the organization.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for having me on here today, Esteban. Essentially, as you and I talk all the time, we've lived in the fitness industry all our lives, which unfortunately is now quite a few years as we start looking at how long this has been. But
Next year, we're 50.
Hey, yeah, I don't want to keep that down, but I'm not still not ready for it. If I had a head of hair like you, I would still be loud and proud. But that's one of the reasons why I shaved my head. But growing up in the industry, one of my favorite things I was able to do was I actually worked with an organization called the National Academy of Sports Medicine, or NASM, which I always say, you know, it's one of those top recognized certifications. And for years, my job was essentially helping to teach our 2-day hands-on workshop. And I think we were one of the first ones to ever actually support the education with a live workshop. And this goes back, of course, a long, long time ago. Had a wonderful time doing that. But at the time when I was doing it, we had an incredible training facility in Calabasas, California, where we actually would train the Shaqs, the Michelle Kwans, these athletes that I was always so starstruck to see. And I just found at times doing that during the week, but on the weekends, basically working with brand new coaches and trainers that are going to be working in more of a big box type arena or anything. They could be in studios as well. But I would find that a lot of times it was almost like I was preaching from the ivory towers, because what we were doing during the week with these specialty clients was nothing like what these brand new coaches were going to be doing, excuse me, as I say, in the real world. So I actually left in a positive way and still taught part-time, but joined a health club chain based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, worked with them, helped grow that organization from 5 to 23 locations in 10 years. That organization wound up selling, got to work with a fitness nutrition program that supported clubs all across the country. So I got to work with tons of organizations. And now the last 2 years, I've been just absolutely ecstatic. And I've landed here with a Crunch franchise, which happens to be the largest Crunch franchise. And I'm real proud of the team, because they're amazing what they do. I'm going to say it's the most successful one too. It really is when you start looking.
For those that are watching and listening, it's the number one team in the world.
It really, it's getting I've walked into an incredible situation where, you know, they were doing this without me, but just being able to try to add anything that we can. But because right now we're sitting at about 48 locations, which we're probably going to be opening another, you know, honestly, 10 to a dozen more clubs this year. It's amazing to see the processes that we get to work with all of these new coaches and with all the members, you know, and Esteban, if I could just say really fast, of course, as the industry has changed so much, what's become so popular and what makes us a little bit different with Crunch is we are that lower price model, but the high quality. So we have everything of group fitness and, you know, the hydro massage and obviously personal training, and, you know, and the clubs are gorgeous, you know, so it's a real different world than really you and I grew up with, where, you know, it was pretty much a middle tier of pricing, and, you know, it just went up from there. Nowadays, we have so many members in a high volume area. So pretty amazing. Sorry,
Yeah,
you asked and watch what happened.
I'm blown away with how much is offered with the organization that you're with for, you know, offline, you and I were talking about that, and I'm like, economically, hardly anybody can compete with that, because just the pure economics side of it. So it's fascinating how again, it's without going into the nitty gritty on the finances, we could do that on a different channel. For a member walking into one of your clubs, they get so much
Yeah.
at a low price point. It's unbelievable. What I do want to ask you though is, so you've got roughly about 1,000 trainers right now within your organization. Depending on the day, a little bit more, a little bit less. So I'm going to go two routes with you.
Yeah.
It's one, we've got her watching right now, and she's in the, I want to bring my sexy back. I want to trim a little bit, and a little bit is always different for each one of us. Is a little bit 5 pounds, is a little bit 30, 40, 50 pounds. But we know that end result is boosted energy, confidence, and getting that sexy back. What are some things that you're seeing that are common pitfalls and barriers with your members, with those tired moms, with those exhausted moms that know that there's more for them across your clubs? And then I'm going to ask you, once we do that, how are you empowering your trainers to be able to get them to cross that bridge from where they are now?
Yeah.
To what they get to create.
Yeah. I think there's so much to talk about with even that first question, but one of the biggest barriers that I can think of is, and this is going to be preaching to the choir, Esteban, but not necessarily having the right customized program for that person. And when I talk about the customization, we're talking about, that person's personal workout history, any type of limitations, how much time do they have to be able to dedicate truly, not just, hey, the first week, because I'm super pumped up, I want to do it all the time, right? You may only have 30 minutes to dedicate, which is totally fine. I personally love 30-minute training sessions more than 60 minutes, to tell you the truth, so we can do things, right? But I want to put that there for a moment, and I want to bring something up though that, Esteban, you and I didn't really have to deal with quite as much, and ironically, we're on it right now, which I'm going to talk about as being a barrier, but it's social media. And back in the day, you and I had to compete with, let's call it, the experts in the bodybuilding magazines as to what people would be reading. And then they would think that was the gospel. Nowadays, with, let's just say, social media, with all the different platforms, anybody and everybody is an expert. So what kills me is thinking that the person who wants to get started but doesn't know what we get into, and they fall for that person that looks good, they've got a lot of followers, they might be doing something that's kind of a fad at that time, and it's just, let's break things down and get real specific about how the body really works. And obviously genetics are different with everybody. Some people can do the smallest amount of work and see great changes. Other people like me have to, do a lot of work and I still don't see changes. But it's let's decipher through all the, excuse me, but the crap that might be out there and very misleading. And now let's get more to the real plan. Still got me, Esteban?
Yeah, no, it's I think of comments I hear and see all the time is like, well, what do you think about this program? What do you think about this workout? And it's you and me 30 years ago with bodies that we didn't realize at the time were killer bodies. And it works for an individual in that chapter of their life.
Yep.
I've been an athlete the last 15, 20 years of my life. I don't have the joint injuries. I don't have to worry about really spending time with a spouse or children or work. So that the dedication of time that they have to invest into their body is different in that phase than it would be 39 going to 40, 49 going to 50, 59 going to 60, because it's just different chapters of their life. And it is, and I'm going to ask you how your team overcomes that, because I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to come to your gym, Rob, and I'm going to be like, well, what about this backflip, triple turn, stand on my head on this stability Bozu thing workout that she looks amazing. Why am I not doing that? So how do you think your team overcome that?
Yeah, no, again, great point. What we do with every one of our new coaches is they have a specific amount of on-the-job training that they complete within the club, within their management system.
And
But
this
then they
is,
go ahead.
if I understand correctly, this is on top of, they've already have to have gone through schooling to receive a nationally accredited certification, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So we only hire the person if they already have a nationally recognized certification and their CPR. But again, I'm going to stop there for a quick moment because this is something, again, I'm sorry, I always refer back to you and I, but we have these conversations all the time on the phone on my long drives. But obviously, there's a difference between having a piece of paper and being book smart, if you will, compared to actually the application, right? So you do have to have the piece of paper, though, to get hired. So we've got that. There's a certain amount of the on the job training, but then you actually come to, whether it's our corporate office, whether we're here in, we're based in Tampa, but we've got clubs in Georgia, South Florida, North Carolina, Texas. So we host our schools all around our different areas, and it's actually a 4-day school. So they learn everything about let's just talk about our initial session where you can build that roadmap with a person by doing more of a physical type assessment. And Esteban, I hope, I actually usually try to stay away from the word assessment. I really do, even though we grew up with it, because I never want somebody to feel intimidated or you're going to assess me. But we just, I always like to use that analogy of the GPS. And if you tell me you want to lose 20 pounds, that's great, but I got to know where we're starting from as well. And then we can build that roadmap and make that straight line for that program on how to be able to get there. And again, most people's life is not a straight line. So if there's construction, a detour, then we're going to revamp your program as need be. And that's most everybody. But we do program design. I mean, we talk about really just things like even the etiquette of being a personal coach, which is more than being a glorified, and I say this lovingly, a glorified repetition counter who's just a cheerleader. Which again, I love being a cheerleader, and I can't tell you I love counting reps, but we actually talk about how to be able to watch the body to make sure that we can keep the risk down, the benefit up of the exercise. And something you mentioned, though, we're talking like to prolong your body as far as your joints and the connective tissue, all those things that, the sexiest movement that we might see on Instagram, for instance, that may not hurt you this time, but if you do it over time, then maybe, again, that risk goes up. So our goal, though, is let's set you up for success with mentors everywhere and get you going.
That's awesome. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because people that aren't in the industry, they don't get it. We knew it as a kinetic screening. So it's the, as you and I would know, the benefit of having an experienced coach that has that expertise versus I'm looking at this exercise without the guidance.
Yep.
And again, next year I'm 50 years old. My body does not move the way it did 30 years ago. I've got 30 plus years
Yeah.
of just wear and tear, and these
Oh,
joints,
yep.
they
Hey, one
don't
of
move
my,
the same way, and the pain levels are a lot higher.
yeah. One of my favorite lines I love talking about with our newest coaches is we might talk about a couple exercises, and there's not many, but there's a few out there that I would look at as a little bit more of a red flag. Maybe some of the behind the neck stuff, right? And what I was going to say is one of my favorite lines is there's always some 18-year-old brand new coach that says, well, it doesn't hurt me. And I'm like, you're 18, you know what I mean? Just wait, right? But there are some things out there that I think the challenge today with people online is they're always trying to separate themselves from somebody else, which I understand that that's as a business. Esteban, you do the same thing, right? We all do. Oh, myself too. But sometimes it's like now you're trying to reinvent some of the movements to look flashier. And, and I don't even know how you feel about this. Sorry, but I'm going to throw this one out there because I cringe every time I see it. It's very popular nowadays, but it's basically that curtsy squat or curtsy lunge where you have your foot planted oriented and you step your back foot behind. And from everything I've ever been taught by my mentors, when I'm watching the foot and the knee and the hip, and you're putting those extreme rotational forces on the knee, again, to me, that risk goes up significantly compared to the benefit of the exercise. And I understand there's some people out there that can do it the rest of their life, never feel pain, look fantastic, but it's almost like they're a lottery winner. The majority of people, though, that's probably not going to be doing a whole lot good for them. And let's keep things nice and aligned for the longevity of your life and
So with
keep you
that,
going.
how are you? What do these trainers know? So I'm doing the curtsy lunge.
Yep.
You've got the one side. I can activate X amount of fibers from
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And then, like for me, on one side, not an issue.
Yep.
Fantastic. I won the lotto. On the other side, I've got a torn meniscus and a repaired LCL, and it's not happening. So for that individual that doesn't have our background, how is it that you're training your trainers to cue for that? And is there, I've heard the terminology modification,
Yeah.
what happens with that?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is this is when we start really breaking down, let's just call it exercise or, movement, if you will, as long as we understand what muscles we're trying to target, what areas or joints they cross. So if the muscles were to shorten, they're going to produce this motion, right? So if my bicep crosses my elbow and crosses my shoulder, if it does this and it does this when it shortens, then all we have to do is apply resistance. And that's kind of the fun thing. And this is, again, it's our passion, but I look at us a lot of times as artists, whereas we can create a program with this blank canvas and we have all these different forms of resistance, whether it's simple body weight, maybe I'm using a TRX, maybe it's dumbbells or kettlebells or a cable unit or a machine, but we have all these things that we can play with. So if we understand what the muscle group does when it shortens and lengthens, then all we have to do to exercise it is just go through the motion with added resistance. Now, resistance, of course, though, isn't the only factor that we can play with when it comes to challenge, right? Because obviously there's the tempo of the exercise, the speed of the exercise is what I'm saying, the amount that you might do, the volume you might choose, right? The list goes on, Esteban, right? And I know, again, I'm preaching to the choir to you with this, but that's the fun thing, is finding that fine line. And if I can add one more thing to one of your first questions to me, though, which was a barrier, and I actually look at this as a pretty big buzzword at the moment, but it's also, how do we get the body for proper recovery, right? Is recovery not one of the big things? I try telling our coaches that all the time, because we talk about flexibility, mobility as one of our components. And I'm like, use the word recovery. You know what I mean? Because how often do we hear about the cold plunges and, everything? It's getting really out there, but it's so true. Where you and I grew up in the game of, no pain, no gain. But now, even at the highest level of professional sports and Olympics, they realize they can't train intensely all the time. Your body's going to break down. So there's ways of saying, we're going to challenge you, then you're going to recuperate, then we can give you more of a moderate challenge. Now you're more recuperated to get a better outcome.
Love that. It's, again, I come back to being a parent. It's in my competitive years, before we got on, we're talking about our jiu-jitsu days. You're still competing, so that's awesome.
I attend class.
There is that level of, man, I feel sore. This is fantastic. This is great. As a parent, I'm like, I don't want to be sore. I don't want to wake up and be aching.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's a way for me to step into my sexy without being in pain all the time.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is again, you just don't have to kill yourself in the gym. And that was kind of the old school mentality and process. And a lot of that probably comes from people like probably a lot of us on the call, just saying, but we enjoy working out. So it's my escape, whether it's physical and mental, for sure. So I like it, but you don't have to. I'm going to use a term our buddy Neil Spruce always used, but it's so true. It's, what do you do with the other 23 hours of the day, which to me includes true rest, active rest, which can be flexibility and some of the different things now that can help with circulation, like the cold plunges and the hot and cold and going back and forth, and nutrition. Whereas, as you've been saying, we're approaching that 50-year mark. It's now, I try telling the coaches this all the time. I probably spend more time foam rolling in the gym than I actually do lifting weights. But that's just me, you know what I mean? Because I've gotten to that point that I want to feel it from a workout, but I don't want to be like, oh gosh, I can't even bend down and pick something up. I don't even want that anymore. And you don't have to do that anymore, just so you know.
It's different chapters, different phases that we evolve with. It's, as you said, it's not a wrong, or it's not a right or a wrong. It's just this is the phase of
Yep.
where I'm at. So wrapping up the live that we've got on Facebook and YouTube, and you've highlighted a couple of it. So I want to bring it down to English. What are a few tips that you could leave her on? Here's what I can do to tone my body and really step into that confident physique by the time summer comes. And again, it's relative to everybody. I mean, it
Yep.
really is. However, the principles and the concepts are the same. So as the professional that trains the professionals of the top team in the world, a couple of steps that you're like, this will help you get toned.
Yeah, easier said than done, but here's something that I would love for people to
That was
think
a
about.
loaded question, and I did it to him on purpose.
Yeah, this is what we talk about with our coaches on how to administer a lot of the programs for people that, again, aren't looking for, to be the biggest bodybuilder necessarily or whatever else. But when you're working out, if you can dedicate 2 to 3 times a week, if your schedule allows you to basically do that more or less on alternate days. And again, we can configure things if you can't, but just hypothetically go with me, since we're talking about this in a very general tone. But if it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing, what I would suggest is try to do your whole body when you're working out. But when you do it, do something where, let's just say, for an example, you might do, I'm going to use body parts if that's okay, everybody, but I might do a back exercise. Then I go to my next thing, might be a chest exercise, then maybe a little bit of shoulders, maybe a little bit of arms, then maybe a little bit of legs. And then what you can do if you want is go over to the cardio deck, or if you're somewhere else where you're not necessarily in a gym, do a few minutes of cardio and then start at the top again and go back down. So what happens is you don't really stop moving throughout the workout, but those areas that you were working, like if I started with back, by the time I came all the way back around, no pun intended, the back musculature is going to be a little bit more recuperated, but that way you minimize the time and like get in and get out. Calorie burn is really nice. But I like you to do that alternate day if possible, because you don't have to do as many sets. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with recovery. Instead of thrashing like an old school program where you're going to do 12 to 20 sets of just back on one day, that's when you need all this rest so you can do it again. This way, if you're just doing somewhere between 2 to 3 sets per workout, you're not beating it down quite so much, and it allows you to recuperate that much more. So between that, and then, hey, obviously, this is a whole thing, but especially if people are looking to lose a little bit of weight, just because we're coming up on summertime, and I realize there's people that want to gain weight too, so we can look at the opposite. But if you're looking to lose weight, you got to first just get an idea of what you're already eating, and you got to be truthful to yourself, right? And we've always said, don't, there's no food shaming. Even if you're eating 3 cheesecakes a day, all we need you to do is let's modify the portion size. So maybe we go to 2.5 cheesecakes a day, where, again, I'm not saying eating cheesecake like that all the time is going to be the most healthy for you, but just trying to not take your body, you know what I mean? And you're saying, I can't do this. Let's just minimize. So my point is, if you're looking to lose weight, let's just cut back a little bit on your portion sizes, and you'll be amazed. Couple your activity, bring down your calorie intake just a little bit so you don't even notice it per meal. And now you're making that, we've always called it that calorie deficit, where your body says, hey, I need to use stored calories, fat, to fill in that gap that I'm now creating with moving more and eating a little bit less. I hope that helps out for, obviously, a snapshot of what we can do. Vanessa, was that okay?
I was going to
Do I
say,
get a thumbs up?
if
Maybe.
Good, except I'm of the group of individuals that is already over 50. And recovery, I have hypothyroidism that's not managed yet. And my recovery I found can be 3 to 5 days, where it never was that before.
Yeah. I just,
So
as
it's just-
everybody evolves, so does the programming that we got, and I appreciate your snapshot of that, Rob, because as you mentioned, you're teaching the professionals that already come with a background, multiple days, full days of intense understanding of how to manipulate the human body. So take that into consideration when you're at home and you're watching this.
Yep.
And it's coming from the source.
And Esteban, can I say one last thing with this, or if you have anything else, of course, but I'll tell you what, to me, it's not necessarily the plan always. And this is where I can be a hypocrite, because I'm a geek about the information.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, and sometimes what everybody needs a bit of help with, it's just the accountability. It's just that if Esteban is my coach, I don't want to let Esteban down. And I know he's going to be checking in on me. And I like when Esteban tells me that I do a good job. I mean, I know what's better for me, an apple or a candy bar. But if I know Esteban's kind of working with me, it's that extra motivation that gets people to push. And I always say, like, I do like to work out, right? But if you were training me this morning, it's going to be way different than what I did. Okay. Just because we had a lot of stuff going on today. I went in with a predetermined number of what I was going to do. I was in, I was out, but you probably would have gotten me to be able to do double than maybe where I was willing to push myself. So that's one of the other really big values of working with somebody, where sometimes you might know the information, but you know what? I need that. I need that help. And
I live there.
big thing.
You and I talk about it. We've been in this world since the early 90s. And I have a coach, and my coach is like, Esteban, you're one of my mentors, and you coached and taught me. And here's the reality: I can't do for myself what my coach can do for me. So it's not about the fact that I memorize things. It's actually showing up and executing. And if it's not for that accountability factor, and I love how you brought that before we closed up, Rob. There's such a high value in, also when I pay, I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
It's just a reality. And I don't have stories in my head like, oh, I know what to do. Well, that's cool. Why the hell weren't you doing it?
Yep.
I don't know. Got it. So that's another area that we get to focus on and build on. But what I do know is that when I'm held accountable by Coach Rob, number one, I'm showing up. And number two, it increases the probability that I'm going to stick to whatever our plan is, because I don't want to let him down and I don't want to let me down. So
Yep.
when you're watching, I'm going to highly encourage you to seek out a coach, and
Yep.
there's a lot of amazing coaches, without a doubt. I want you to look in on the K7 team, and also look near where you live, because there's a lot of great coaches out there. The accountability alone
Yep.
is priceless.
Yeah. Yep. And hey, Esteban, if I can say as well, you kind of said it for a moment, but now with me being older too, it's tremendous where I know this is crazy, but when you pay for it, it's that extra thing that makes you stick with it. And we just know if it's free, I've always found with somebody, whenever you give something away for free and something else comes up in their life that conflicts with that free thing, the free thing goes out the window right away. And
There's no
you know,
value.
we've talked about it forever about giving away things or going online, and I can find great programs, because you can, but when you pay for it, yes, you tend to go, you know what? I got to do this. You know what I mean? Like, I paid good money, and I've never met anybody. And I bet, again, I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but I bet anything, out of all the people you've helped in your life within, physical fitness and body transformation, I bet anything, the majority of them would say working with you and spending the money was one of the best things they ever did. Nobody ever goes, I want the old body back. Never heard that yet. They go, thank you for doing that. So just want to throw that out there. When you really do think about it, it's one of those things that actually makes you stick with it.
Without a doubt. And I'll close with this, and we'll go to the VIP experience. Don't cut yourself short. Realize the value that you have, and this goes for the individuals that are price shopping. You do not want to price shop a coach. You want to identify who is the best coach for me in the chapter that I'm in to take me to my goal. And then once you're in that goal, you're going to have a new goal. You're going to have a new destination. And same thing then. Identify who's the best coach for you at that given point in time. But don't cut yourself short. You know, you're not a discount. Like don't discount your value. And legit, I've seen it, and Rob, you probably have also. The more people pay, the more they pay attention, and the more they value that. I've got to do this because I put some serious money with Coach Rob. Like and it's easier to stay on track because there's that justification. I have to because.
Yep.
Thank you guys for watching. Give the love.
Mhm.
Put the 4s in the comments, and anything that you want to know in addition to, I'll text them. I'll text them and ask them your questions. YouTube, Facebook, love ya. VIP, hang tight with us.